Yo, what's going on guys? Welcome back to a brand new video on the channel. Inside of today's video, I'm going to be giving you guys a full brawler guide for the brawler Willow. As you guys see, I got her mastery yesterday, one of the first in the world. I've been playing Willow for probably like 24 hours now. I feel like that's definitely enough time to master literally everything about her. So, of course, before we jump into it, make sure you're using the creator code. That'd be greatly appreciated. And without further ado, let's hop into it. So firstly, we're going to be taking a look at the best build for Willow. So starting off with the gadgets. So we only have one gadget and one star power in the game right now. The first gadget is called Spellbound. So what this gadget does, it enables you to deal the full damage of the poison straight away, plus 500 damage. So 2,300 damage with this gadget. This gadget is really strong at confirming kills, whilst her other gadget called Dive, it'll be really good in Power League to counter certain brawlers like a Gene because of his super. The Dive will allow you to become immune, so of course Gene can't super you, or like a Mandy super or something like that. So I can see this gadget being good in game modes like Knockout or Bounty, but overall Spellbound is definitely the better gadget. It's going to help you out in a lot of scenarios. So now moving on to the star powers, starting off with Love is Blind. So Love is Blind is a good star power. It allows you to slow the reload speed of the opponent by 25%, but it's actually pretty hard to spot the value with these types of star powers, whereas with Obsession, the second star power, which isn't in the game right now, but it gives a 75% increased movement speed for people who are supered by you, who are mind controlled. So that's going to be insane. 75% is like the fastest brawler inside of a game. You imagine this with just basically any high DPS brawler, it's going to be really strong. So I think Obsession is definitely going to be the better star power. And lastly, we have the gears. So you only need a choice of 3 gears with throwers in general, especially Willow. You need the speed, damage, and shield. Of course, it depends on the matchup, or it depends on whether it's a grassy map. But to be honest, pretty much every single map I went speed and shield, just because Willow's quite squishy, so you need the extra HP. But also the speed gear really helps you in a throw 1v1, because normally when you play Willow, throwers are just good in general on that map. So you're probably going to be facing like a Barley or a Dynamite. So speed really helps you gain that advantage in 1v1. The best game modes for Willow are clearly Brawl and Gem Grab. Brawl, there's just a lot of maps with a lot of walls, so of course throwers are going to dominate in that game mode. But not only that, her super gets the most value in that game mode, because a lot of the time when you're in a good position near the goal, you can just pass the ball up, super the opponent, and just walk the ball in. It's an insane strategy. Gem Grab as well, there's quite a few maps where you can take advantage of the unbreakable walls. And then good game modes, we have Knockout and Hot Zone. Whilst Hot Zone, there's a few maps in general where there's a lot of unbreakable walls where she can be pretty good in, and Knockout, you know, there's a lot of good throwers in Knockout, and Willow can be one of them. And then for the worst game modes, we have Heist. She doesn't really do the most insane damage, and she's not really the best defensive brawler. And then Bounty, Showdown, and Duels as well. So a lot of bad game modes for Willow. Next, we have the best maps for Willow. So you can just think of brawlers like Barley, for example. They have very similar characteristics, so you can definitely apply the best maps for Barley with the best maps for Willow. But in general, Super Beach, Iron Corridor, Field Gold, and Iron Cover, you can see all of those unbreakable walls, or just those lanes with a lot of walls. Of course, throwers are going to really dominate in these specific scenarios. And then you have Acute Angle, Solid Center, Flare and Phoenix, and Bell's Rock. So although she doesn't have the best matchup against some of the throwers, I just think in general, those types of maps, throwers are going to dominate. Control and the brawler can always be good depending on the situation, but typically this list helps provide the best face value for your supers. So what you want to do with your super, you want to be making sure that you're controlling a brawler that has some really good DPS. So you can think of brawlers like B, for example, Otis, you know, tanks like Bull and Buzz, they have some really quick DPS, same with Ems as well. Whereas brawlers you don't really want to control, mainly because you're not going to get a lot of value out of them. You know, brawlers like Edgar. Edgar has terrible range and is terrible without super, because you've got to remember, when you control someone, you can't control their super, so bear that in mind. Also, brawlers that don't have quick DPS, you know, brawlers like Byron, for example, brawlers like Chester, sometimes it's really bad because he's not in his full sequence, so he can't do a lot of damage. You know, brawlers like Meg as well in first form, they're going to be terrible to control, so bear that in mind straight away. It's pretty hard as well to hit your super. It don't matter the range, it's actually just hard no matter what, so make sure you're manually aiming your super all of the time. And also the range is actually really short, so basically when you're supering someone, you're probably going to be directly in their line of sight, so it's going to be really hard to actually mind control those longer range brawlers. So of course, bear that in mind. You can't just throw your super out in the open. Those snipers are going to be able to take you down before you can even get close enough to them. And you've also got to bear in mind, with a second star power coming out soon, you got to be ready for my video on it, because this list might drastically change. Because of 75% speed boost, I can see that being really OP on basically all of the tanks. rank. So next we have the best matchups for Willows. So going from all the way from the best to decent to bad. So starting off with best, Willow typically counters to squishier brawlers. So just like typical throwers like Barley, this is mainly because she can kill a lot of people with only 2 ammo. Brawlers below 3600 HP, she will basically 2-shot. So that's going to be really good. You know, brawlers like B, Piper without the shield gear, she can 2-shot them so easily. So of course she's going to counter a lot of those turret brawlers as well, like your generic thrower. The brawlers that she's decent against, basically brawlers that are like situational. You know, she can do decent sometimes, but maybe their super can gain an advantage, maybe your super can be an advantage. It's just okay, like it's not unwinnable, but it's not you completely dominate them. And then lastly we have bad. So these are the brawlers that you basically want to stay away from as much as possible. So if they're down your lane, you've been making sure that you're trying to communicate with your teammate and switching that matchup as soon as possible, because more often than not they'll get the better hand of you and they'll be able to correlate that into probably a goal or something in Brawl. So these are brawlers typically that are like assassins, you know, like Buzz or Mortis, because they can take down Willow quickly. You got to remember, Willow only deals poison damage, so over time she deals a lot of damage, but quickly she doesn't deal enough damage to deal with those assassin brawlers. So constant aggression really unsettles Willow, as her attack can be so easy to dodge as well. Next point I wanted to make is that you need to remember the brawler's damage maths. I feel like it's even more important for a brawler like Willow who does consistent damage, so it should be pretty easy to know how much damage you're dealing to an opponent. So the thing I want to point out as well is that the maths is the most important thing about interactions. It's not just learning a brawler's HP and learning whether you can deal damage to them. Just look at the brawler's HP. That's all you need to think about. You don't need to think about all this other stupid stuff as well. So you can see by the quick diagram that these are the values that you need to remember the most, especially when you're trying to look at interactions, when you can quickly gadget someone and then a couple of pieces of ammo. Those are really important interactions which can quickly help you determine whether you can counter a brawler or not. So now we're moving on to the more general tips, probably 5 or so tips that you really need to know that will help you master Willow. So the first one is going to be in specific. You can use this in pretty much every game mode, but I thought Hot Zone was the best way to show it. So in Hot Zone, you can use a super to simply just run the enemies back into spawn to waste time. You may wonder, well, that's a waste of super, but I did this quite often in Hot Zone on Iron Cover, and it really helps me keep control. You know, for example, if it's like a Buzz, a really hard matchup, what you want to do is just super them, run them all the way back to spawn, waste their ammo. It's going to waste probably like 5 or 10 seconds, because then they've got to come all the way back. It can allow you to keep control even further, allow your teammates to then turn the tides onto the other 2 brawlers, and just waste a lot of time. You can get a lot of percentage on that zone. The next tip is to, no matter what, make sure to waste the ammo from an enemy, because you only have 4 seconds in that super. It's not a lot of time, so at least removing the ammo from the enemy makes them really vulnerable when they return. A great example is when Mortis is about to kill you. So what you can do is super him, use all his ammo up, make sure he's really far away from you when he returns, and then because he has a really slow reload speed, he's not going to be able to even take you down because he has no ammo. So the next tip is quite advanced, because I've not actually done this too often, but I thought I'd show it to you guys, just because I feel like it can definitely be a really good play. So in awkward situations, you can actually use some brawlers to body block for you. Just don't do this with high DPS brawlers like tanks, but it can be useful to do with brawlers like Dynamite and Piper. So what I mean by that is, say for example, if you mind control a Dynamite, but then you can't really do any damage to the opponents because they're just respawning, and say like a Colt is respawning and you're pretty low, and if he kills you, of course, that's going to be really bad. So you've got to use the mind controlled brawler to tank for you, but then because they're not a high DPS brawler, they can't take you down in return when they go back to their normal state. Maybe you and your teammates can take down that Dynamite really quickly anyways, but making sure you're using that mind control brawler to block for Willow. The next tip is to be aware that when you control an enemy, it charges their super, so make sure to manage the risk and the reward. For example, you don't want to charge an OP super like a Primo, especially if he's close to you or an objective or your teammates, because he'll just jump straight onto you and kill you with ease once he returns back to his normal state. You've got to remember as well is that they actually return to their full HP. So this can be good and bad. It's good because it can allow you to find kills and walk the ball in on Brawl much easier, for example, but it can also be catastrophic. I've done this several times where just out of instinct, I've just supered a really low HP brawler. Then say for example, they're like a Primo or an Ash. You then super them, they then regain all of that HP, so they have 8k HP now. You can't get any value with that super, unfortunately, and then they return back to their normal state. They're just going to absolutely destroy, because now they have full HP. Now they've got their upper hand. So just to actually make sure that you're incredibly disciplined with this super, because as I said, even I've made this mistake several times. So discipline is really important to train your mind not to make these silly mistakes again. And the last tip I would like to share with you guys applies to most throwers and a lot of brawlers, to be honest, but in particular brawlers like Barley and Willow. So what you want to be doing is, of course, making sure you're conserving your ammo as much as possible, especially against like assassin brawlers. So what you want to be doing is keeping them low, but not just spamming out all of your shots, because a lot of the time, if you do this, a good assassin brawler, or just any good person in general, will be counting down your ammo, and say if you waste a couple of shots and miss them, they're just going to easily close the gap and take you down. You know, that applies with most brawlers, but I've noticed it way more with brawlers like Barley and Willow, just because it's just easy to take them down. They're easily countered by assassins. So what you want to be doing, even if you're missing shots, at least be putting your shots in an area that are kind of forcing their opponents back. So with every shot, you kind of want to be making sure that you're on the aggression, you're forcing them into the uncomfortable position, because then you'll be having control over the entire map with those shots. Alright guys, it's going to be it for today's video. Let me know what you think of my guide and what I can improve on it. There's of course a lot of things that I probably missed out, but this is my first proper brawler guide. I probably will do something like talking over certain games, you know, maybe like a bad game, what I could have done better, and maybe I could talk over a good game and say why I did this, why I went on to a certain matchup. But for now, I think this is a decent guide, but of course, there's a lot of improvements to be made, so let me know down in the comment section below, and of course, let me know what brawler you want to see next. I'm close to RT Mastery, I probably will do that next week, but any other brawlers that you really want to learn, let me know down in the comment section below. But that's going to be it for today's video, guys. Hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.